Nick Woolsey's influence on poi culture cannot be measured. He is, in my opinion, the most influential poi spinner of all time. Nick played a crucial role in my own journey and in so many of yours. As a host, I try to balance the amount of praise and thanks I give to my guests on the behalf of you, the audience, and on the behalf of my guest. So, but you have to understand how much this man means to me as an artist. I am just a man slowly improving as a host. And more importantly, I am so honored to be interviewing Nick. So I had to express my gratitude and appreciation for him and the work that he has done on the behalf of not only myself, but of thousands of you. You can support this project on Patreon to help us continue the podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the Poidcast and enjoy this very special episode, my friends. Nick, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us for a monumental 18th episode. Let me start off by saying this. The podcast very well could not even exist without you, and I am very grateful for your time today. I just want to wish you a warm welcome to the podcast. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, really excited to do this one. Yeah. Shout out to Joey. He's over there killing it on the behind the scenes all the time. So I know you've probably told this story several times throughout your life, but I want you to take us back to the very beginning of your journey. Let's rewind. I want you to tell us, first of all, how did you start spinning poi? Where were you at and where are you from?
Well, I'm from Halifax, Nova Scotia, on the east coast of Canada, above Maine. In a way, I mean, to me, it's where the movement journey began. So around when I was 19 or 20, I had this experience where I kind of realized, I really find movement interesting. I really wanted to explore that. And then I found there was this man teaching traditional Chen style Tai Chi in Halifax, and I jumped into that for a while. And I really liked the circles. It felt really good to feel like this circular movement going through my body. But it wasn't exactly what I was looking for. But I knew I liked it when I was training something. So I went through some years, and I was life stuff is happening. I moved out west. I was trying different martial arts, and it's like, okay, but I'm not violent. I really don't like fighting. Was thinking, what is it? But I had this sense that I was I was like, well, I don't like kicking people. But I was looking for something to train in. And then I had discovered kind of an intentional, DJ dance community that I liked. And I was at a party. Roberts Creek is a town north of Vancouver. And it was January, and they booked the fire hall to do, all night parties. And I was really getting into my dance flow that night, where I was just really, I was like pirouetting and just spinning around, really feeling it. And I can really be in my head, right? So when I'm really dancing, I start getting out of my head and just experiencing, the flow. That really does something for me. I went outside, and there were some people lighting up. And I had seen fire spinning a few times that hadn't really caught my attention. But there was this woman who was a really graceful. I wish I had a video of that performance. So she was lighting up with fire poi, and she did what I think was a really elegant, a really powerful and graceful fire poi. Just improv. It was just, she's just spinning outside. And I was like, boom! I was like, that's the thing. That's the thing. That's what I want to do. And within days, I had tennis balls on strings, and I'm finding people who do it. And I'm like, wow, how does this work? And that was it. I was just for years I was practicing. I don't know how many hours a week, but probably averaging 4 hours a day or something.
Surely.
And that's how it began.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you very much. I've heard the story before on a separate interview, but I appreciate. I'm okay hearing it again. Hopefully, y'all are too. Now, typically, when I ask my guests who their earliest online inspiration was, they will typically say it was you. Now, who, if anyone, in the poi world at that time did you have to look up to for inspiration? And I know you started spinning poi before the internet was really a thing, so this would be probably in person. But I know that you don't really know who that woman was after that whole thing happened. You still to this day don't know who she is. So who did you have in your life
No.
that really inspired you to go down that path?
Well, let's see. There's a few. As far as videos, the first video I saw I remember really well was I don't know, probably 6 months or pretty early after that night. I ordered the ᴰᴅᴜᴜᴜ. It was like the second Circles of Light DVD, I think.
Yeah.
And there was Sage, Sage from Arizona or something. She really stood out in that compilation as being like, oh, that's the stuff right there. So that was the first time I watched a video, and I was really like, damn.
Hmm.
But this is back in the day when the only way to find videos is people would figure out a way to upload them and then share them on the ᴰᴅᴜᴜᴜ chat forums.
Hmm.
So I remember, Rob Thorburn and Drew Batchelor and Fluffy Napalm Fairy, and there was these other people kind of emerging in those days. But in that time, and then a year or two later, like somebody sent me the video of Utah, and I was like, oh wow, he's really doing flowers, right? And that was
Hmm.
the first time I saw somebody else doing flowers. But my generation is really before the video generation. So
Hmm.
I left Vancouver a couple of years after starting because I was kind of eclipsing um, the local scene in certain ways, and I was like, I want to find other people that are really into this,
Hmm.
and in similar ways to the way I am, because there there were some great people in Vancouver, but nobody quite shared the way
Yeah.
the way I saw it. So I thought, okay, I'll go to Thailand. I'm sure I'll meet people are really into this in Thailand, um, and it was harder than I thought to find people who shared my particular interest. But I met Andy Hnickschmidt, and he was the first person who he was doing isolation extension hybrids. It was for years that's the only thing hybrids meant. And he showed
Hmm.
me the poi doing split time in his
Yeah.
hand. I was like, what sorcery is this? And he had some stuff that was just totally like I hadn't thought of. Um,
Yeah.
and then a year after that, I went to EJC, and that's where I remember seeing Ronin on stage, and people are like, "That's Ronin." And then
Mm,
he's doing like horizontal throws and stuff, and I think
yep.
he already had the contact balls, and I was like, "Wow." But yeah, back then, I had to go to these events. I had to go to EJC and Uberpoi and stuff like that in order to see what people were doing, because it wasn't so easy to put stuff online.
Sure.
Um, yeah.
Well, that and yeah, so I mean, you a lot to take in. So you became so passionate and obsessed with poi that you ventured away from your hometown to find people that met you with the same level of passion that you had and the same desire to become whatever great or whatever to explore poi and what it is. And yeah, so while you're on the topic of Ronin, I do want to pull the video up just for
Yeah.
everybody at home. We might as well go ahead and get into it now on the topic of Ronin. So I'll let Joey pull this video up. This I've seen this video in so many different contexts throughout the years, people talking about Ronin or the earlier styles of poi spinning. Now, keep in mind, this video is I think this video is 14 or 15 years old. So for everybody at home, where were you 15 years ago? Think about that. You know, this is where Ronin was 15 years ago. So this is him exploring early ideas of contact poi, all kinds of different things, because the landscape was very open during this time. So it was pretty much, there was so much room for creation. There still is, but wow, back then, pretty much anything that anybody was finding, any patterns or any things, for example, this was all new. This was all new.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did you see this live?
Does it say where this was filmed? I forget. I don't always have the best memory.
You've seen quite a lot of poi spinners and poi performances over the years, so I don't blame you.
Also,
but
14 years ago, so I'm just.
Yeah, enjoy the brilliance of Ronin, folks. This is a very important video, and Ronin, very much like yourself, was doing such important work back then.
Ronin's one of the all-time innovators.
Yeah, of course. For those of you who don't know, he, in many people's minds, in my opinion as well, the godfather of contact poi, right? So very much an innovator in terms of a lot of different things, but particularly contact poi. This man has an incredible mind for poi, and like Nick was saying, was people were, saw him and were like, oh, that's the guy, like that's Ronin, so he carried this this specific prestige with him early on, in the same way that you did. Now tell me, so when you saw your first poi video online, did you have the immediate click or the thought to say, hey, maybe I should be putting out videos online? When did the crossover between being a viewer of poi videos and being a producer of poi videos, when did that happen, and what spurred that?
Yeah, it was less than a year. I think I put this video up of me at Trout Lake, not that far from here. And that would have been less than a year. So that would have been like 8 months into my poi journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I had earlier on, I had an interest in video and media production. So it was sort of natural of me to want to get a camera and to start shooting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was meeting people on the Home Poi forum. So I was just like, yeah, I'll go shoot a video and show people what I'm doing.
Right.
And then it was about 2.5 years into poi. I did the circles of the ᴍᴜᴜᴜᴜ video.
Yeah.
It was a bit more intentional.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was pretty early. I was like, yeah, I'll play with this, putting videos online thing. And I had to figure out, like, how do I host the video? I need a website. Where do I, that lets me put up poi videos. Yeah.
Right. It's not just having an app and uploading videos. No. Yeah.
ᴜᴜ told me about YouTube. A couple of years, about 4 years or 5 years in. I remember him writing, being like, there's this thing called YouTube now, free video hosting. And I was like, free video hosting? He was like, yeah, free. And I was like, who's heard of this? How do they make it free?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So when you started releasing videos, let's talk about YouTube, because I know you had a whole a variety of different videos released on forums and, the things that we're just kind of referring to before YouTube. But when you got a YouTube page and you started releasing YouTube videos of you spinning poi, when did you start realizing that they were getting traffic? And like,
that's not the best way to tell
it from your story, please.
So I put up ᴍᴜᴜᴜᴜ on my website, and I was hosting my website. My friends had a web hosting company, so I made my first website with them. This is me programming. And I put it up, and that's when I left to go to Thailand. It was like, a month or two after I put a video up, I was like, hey, check this out. And off I went to Thailand. And this is back, like it's hard to get the internet back then in Thailand. So I'm in Thailand for months, and what I don't know is that video went viral. And I get home, and by then I'd actually become kind of Thailand costs more than I expected. And I'm arriving home, I'm broke and I'm unemployed, and I figure out that my phone bill had been more than I thought, or I was like, where am I going to live? And oh shit! And my friends are like, oh yeah, Nick, you owe us $1,000. I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, you've been getting all this web traffic, and it's really costing us a lot to host the website.
No
And
kidding.
we've already had to pay it. So my friends have already had to pay to where they're getting their bandwidth from, because this video has been downloaded, like, and people were sort of watching it over and over again to like try to figure out the moves and stuff.
Of course.
And I owe my friends like $1,000. And this is me, as I'm 20 whatever, and I have no money, I have no job.
Oh my.
That was like $1,000 I didn't have. But some weeks after that, I'm like, oh, what am I going to do for work? I get an email from somebody in California, like in Humboldt County, being like, hey, we are watching this video you made, and we're a group of Poi people here. Would you come through and do like a workshop with us or something? And I was like, oh, I would consider that. And then a couple of weeks later, I get an email from San Francisco being like, hey, we're these Poi spinners in San Francisco. We saw this video you put up. Would you consider visiting? And I was like, oh, well, yeah, it's funny. Somebody just wrote me from Humboldt. And before you know it, like I had like 4 places in the West Coast that wanted me to visit. So I was like, well, I'm broken in debt. Of course I'm going to go to California. Yeah.
Okay.
So by the time Utah told me about, that was the context of Utah telling me, I was like, Utah, I can't afford to put up more videos. And he was like, oh, well, check out this thing called YouTube. It's free video hosting.
Right.
I'm like, free video. Yeah.
Brilliant. Wow, that gave me so much context in terms of the channel, YouTube as a whole. And
big thanks to to those people from, like Terry and Humboldt, and the people who reached out to me, and all like a lot of the times I've traveled and taught workshops. So often it's been either people just randomly have contacted me, or I've written me on the website again. I've been like, does anybody want workshops in Europe? And a big part of my Poi journey has been the traveling and teaching, and it's always because people have been willing to host me and reach out in their communities. And so it's really a lot of a kindness I've really received over the years from people doing that.
Well, and I think you're a very humble man. So I don't blame you for not being able to see that. Maybe you do, but maybe I don't think you could not realize how significant what you were doing at that time period was. It's difficult to see things when they're happening, but yeah, I mean, other people saw that in you, and sure, they showed you hospitality and gave you the opportunities, and I think a lot of us are thankful for that, but also it does come down to at a certain point of them seeing the importance of what was happening, and they're like, wow, like we're also learning how to spin Poi. We're also have people, interested in learning, and those connections are going to be made. And this was really the forefront of a larger online Poi community that was, blossoming and starting. So did it ever occur to you that these videos were going to be doing well? Like, was that ever even a thought in your mind that those opportunities would start coming, or maybe the Poi community at large would be growing from, via online?
Well, yeah, I mean, that video, when Dervishly Years, went viral, and that led to, me first being able to travel and meet people. And it's sort of that connection between, okay, I mean, there's a few things that there's like, it became obvious that I could put up videos. And it also became obvious, it pretty quickly became obvious that this thing, like when YouTube came out especially, that there was this thing happening, and not just poi, that like I
Mm-hmm.
could tell what's happening with breakdancing, all these things, that this whole like online, this how the internet was enabling the expansion of and cross-pollination within art forms and across art forms. So it's like, wow, there's really something going on here. But that had been, I mean, that had already been obvious through when we were sharing videos on Home of Poi.
Sure.
But the degree to which it escalated, because in the Home of Poi days, you couldn't even, okay, you need to get a video camera. Then you need to get a special graphics video card and put it into your computer, and that costs like $500 or whatever, so that you can actually edit videos, and then pay for the, there are all these barriers, and then it kept getting easier to shoot and edit, and and then as those barriers fell, it was really obvious what was happening. That the easier it got, the more people would put up videos and share them, and that. And so, and then I don't know, and that all leads into what ends up becoming a pretty, the whole social media thing, and the whole thing of how I kept ending up in the position where I would get myself into debt, and then the way out of debt would be like, oh well, what job am I going to in Canada, right? Like I don't. And then I'd be like, okay, I'll go on another workshop tour, or we'll do these retreats in Bali, and that would come down to where putting up content starts having different motivations, which starts creating a kind of an emotional difficulty for me, because I'm an introvert by nature, and social media is a lot of things, but it's not entirely psychologically healthy. And Poi was becoming my career, and now the video that I'm putting up, which is largely, a lot of it's about me, both in terms, okay, so there's like whatever skillfulness that I'm showing, there's also like who I am as a person is part of what interests me in coming to my events. And so it starts being like, okay, this is kind of like weird, where I want people to come to these events, but like I'm putting these videos up, these pretty personal videos of me, and how much traction they get and how many people like them and share them is going to influence whether or not I'm going to lose money or make money or break even on this event I want to do in Bali.
You had a lot riding.
Yeah, and that's not. I don't think it's healthy for most people. Like the thing of like me being the product, and like the whole thing with social media, whether you're getting likes and shares, that's already kind of has some is asking for trouble psychologically for a lot of people.
Totally.
But when you wind your whole career into it, it gets really complex.
Absolutely. And we feel that on many of us. I mean, viewers at home, I'm speaking directly to you right now. You can feel that and relate to that on your own level, as far as, and of course it's not the same, because again, we don't have massive opportunities in life. Like our life isn't necessarily, most of us at least, our lives are not necessarily being dictated on whether or not, these opportunities come to fruition based on how well our videos are doing. But you're, I mean, quite frankly, and literally the most or one of the people that experienced this probably the earliest, as far as what we think of and what we define as a content creator nowadays. So and in terms of a community, because I've said this on the podcast several times already, but the internet was the turning point to where community is no longer defined by our geographical location, but really based on what are you passionate about, what are your hobbies, and that was kind of the dawn of a new era in a lot of ways. So in terms of a community, what do you think we value? And this is very broad, but in terms of a Poi community, what do you think we value? And do you think that has any kind of correlations, positive or negative, and broadly speaking?
Yeah, there's a lot. It's a lot to dive into there. One of the things I've noticed in the world, and Poi, but in the world, is there's often this value. Is it who we celebrate, and what we want. So we get into something. So we get into Poi. I get into Poi, or Zouk dancing is my latest thing. And what became obvious to me, say, looking back at Poi in my own journey, and watching other people, is one of the reasons I got somewhat proficient with Poi was because I enjoyed it from the beginning. And I enjoy, like, the times I was happiest with Poi was actually pretty early on. Those first few years when every time I'd really have a big night of practicing, something new would click, and I'd get such a rush out of that every time, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But what most people want is they watch, like Ronin at his best, and it's like, oh, I want that. And even though that's often not the fun part, right? So often,
yes,
yeah, because we'll watch like Jonathan Alvarez. I don't think at the end when he was being celebrated is where he's happiest, right? And it wasn't when I was happiest. So I think there's this mistake where people think when I'm good like that, that'll feel really good, right? Because I'll have made it. And there's I think that's something I've often looked for, is this feeling of having made it, right? Like, I'm okay now because whatever. And a lot of people, myself included, can fall into that tendency. So, and it's like, people also think that sort of recognition will feel good, but that's also there. I see little evidence of that, right? Like, I appreciate that there's people, I can look at the number below the video and be like, oh, there's like, I got all this likes, and in theory, there's all these people who appreciated that video,
right?
And I can be like, okay, well, abstractly, that's great, but that also does nothing for me in a certain way, right? Like, in person, seeing somebody, they're trying to learn the 3-beat weave, and I can see why it's not working, and I'm like, you want a tip? And then we work on it together, and they're like, oh my god, it's working, or whatever. Somebody needs a hug, and I give them a hug, or they give me a hug. Like, that ends up, we're wired up for that meaning something. We're not wired up for, like, but we think recognition and acclaim and things like that, we think, for some reason, it's really easy to think that will, and I use us, that's us and people like me, maybe, right? I'm sure there's lots of people who don't fall into that, but out there in the world, what I see is that's at play a lot, where we want to have made it to this thing, even though we've all been told the journey is the destination is a journey.
Well, you have to love that internally, though. You have to be happy with where you are at, in terms of progression. And, like you said, we think that external gratification, and, we kind of look at it in terms of skill. Once I'm at this skill level, I'll be where I want to be. I'll be satisfied. Or once I have a certain level of notoriety, I'll be where I want to be, mentally, or, I'll have accomplished this. But the reality is the bar keeps getting further and further. The bar to being where we want to be at is always being pushed. And I think
it gets harder to make progress.
Yeah. In some ways, it's good for us to keep us motivated, because if we just got where we wanted to be, it would be like, okay, cool, we did it. We're good. Right. But in terms of basing like a certain level of happiness off of how, where we are on that spectrum or on that goal, becomes much more difficult to deal with when you realize that you attained something and you're still not, really happy. You're not satisfied by it. So yeah, I hear you. And it's a very interesting perspective to hear from you specifically, because I know that you've been through this more than a lot of people will ever get to experience.
Yeah, and on that note, when if I think back, who do I really admire over these years? And some of the obvious people come to mind, like, like Ronin on that stage before the performance where he's just practicing so diligently and really curious, really exploring. I really admire that. But I also admire just a few times over the years, I've I was often teaching beginner series. I do like an 8-week course in poi or whatever. And a few times I had people in my courses who were learning really slowly, um, and loving it, right? Who were not picking it up quickly, who two left hands, like how does like we're class 4, they're still working on behind the shoulder reel. Everybody else is like turning the weaves. Um, and they get behind the shoulder reel and they're like, yeah, I'm doing it. And they're not judging themselves on that spectrum of comparing themselves to other people. It's really rare to see somebody learning that way. And so I actually think of it's just like probably 3 times I've really seen it. And I think of them, because if I'm having a slow time or hard time with something, I think of uh, I think of Amanda, and I'm like, man, I
Right,
remember
right.
how awesome she was, how like determined and brave and fun, how much fun she was having, even
Yeah,
though like compared to the class, whatever.
right.
Uh, so big
Yeah,
call
and
out
and if
to
if
those people.
sorry, if Amanda was you, Amanda would be over the moon about, like, but yeah, and something that you mentioned earlier towards the beginning of that was when you were having the most fun, you were early on in learning, and it does become the magic kind of gets lost a little bit over, the time. And it's hard, you can pick it back up and find it again and find the passion and the original drive behind it. But yeah, during the early days where everything is something new and you don't have all these established habits or patterns, um it can a little bit be feel mundane at a certain point now. But this is an interesting topic that I was going to save towards the end a little bit, but just since we're here, what do you think is, because I know that you've gone through these periods of finding immense amounts of inspiration and then the down periods where, it just feels like, why am I doing this? Like, what do I take away from this? What are the ways that you've found yourself mentally coming back to being passionate about poi again and getting back on the horse and finding, the original funness and a sense of passion and happiness out of it?
Hmm. Uh, yeah, I the first 10 years I was actually pretty consistent. I I go through pretty intense depressions, and that was happening in those first 10 years. But I didn't lose my interest in poi. I ended up like broke and homeless and in debt and stressed out and depressed. Um, but I'd be depressed and homeless with my poi, being like, I really want to just get somewhere where I can just practice.
uh, yeah.
But
Sorry.
it all. I mean, the irony of eventually, and then I mean, it's a long story of how I get myself, because I'll come out of depression and then I'll have this big idea, and then the next thing you know, like I'm hiring a filmmaker to make this thing I haven't even written a script for yet. And then the next thing you know, it doesn't go very well, and then I'm back in debt, and this was this kind of cycle for years. And then eventually, about 10 years in, I was in Bali, and spinner G was there, and I had rented this like awesome kind of home with this view of the rice paddies. It's beautiful, and we got mirrors, put the mirrors in the walls, and it was all set up. And then I think within weeks, I over the years had trouble with my shoulder on and off. It starts to shear and gets really loose,
Hmm.
and then in that kind of G and I started doing some pretty intense practice, and I really being, it wasn't good. My shoulder quickly was like, oh, this is really
This
isn't
is a
good.
problem.
Yeah, it was like beginning like, oh, okay, that's like a noise. It shouldn't be making noises. And then I had to stop, and that really changed my journey with poi, because it took a while to get my shoulder back to where I felt like I could spin, and it was clear. I'm sure I can do these types of moves. I'm sure I can't do like all that wall plane stuff with the arms crossing. That's what did it, because that reach, trying to make those flowers really clean, I'm really taking my shoulder further than it should go. Okay,
Of
I
course.
shouldn't be doing that. And what about this stuff, X, Y, and Z? Can I do? And it just meant playing poi. There was always this, I really don't want to make my shoulder worse. And then after that, I would have waves of inspiration that usually related to getting together with somebody. Like me and Ailey and John are hanging out, and some ideas come out. I'm like, oh yeah, I'd love to be able to like link, certain things together. And then would for a while be really practicing. But never quite getting back to what it was like in those first 10 years, where I really had, and also I just kind of burnt out on certain things. And then eventually I was like, since it's always so hard to like figure out a place to practice, maybe I should play guitar. I was playing guitar for a while, and then like, at one point it was acro yoga and partner dancing, and then at one point it was surfing. I started doing other things.
Right. But, and it's I think it's pretty normal to feel burnt out at some point by something that we love, because if we pursue it at a really high level, it's not always fun. It's not always fun. At least in my experience, and many others that are very passionate about something, and we pursue it for a long time, there are naturally going to be ebbs and flows, and highs and lows to everything that we're passionate about. That's not just poi related, that's everything. So even life, I get burnt out on life, man. So something that I do want to get into, many of us know, because you have such an important perspective on this, and I'm curious. I've been excited to ask you this one for a while. So as many of us know, spinning poi by yourself, and the feelings that we've been talking about, as far as joy and exploration and curiousness, that's all a lot easier to do behind closed doors. So when did you start? How early on did you start performing, and what lessons have you learned along the way to become a better performer?
I never performed a lot.
I doubt I am gonna believe you, but I call bullshit a little bit. I feel like you performed more than you probably realize. You did perform quite a bit.
I mean, it was pretty rare. Like,
really?
because I was on this, I got in this circuit of where I would, I had this really good friends in Switzerland, and we do the poi and yoga in Switzerland in the summer, and then for a while it was Bali in the winter, and then Costa Rica. And what happened was, in all of that, I developed friendships that became really meaningful to me. And that's part of what kept me on that circuit for so long, was I just would miss my Swiss friends who'd be away from Switzerland, and I'd miss my Costa Rica friends but to keep seeing my friends, I had to kind of keep going. And those events were really special. Like the poi retreats were really special. But none of it lent itself to performing particularly. So, at the end of every retreat, we'd always do fire night. And in Costa Rica, they do fire spinning on the corner of Montezuma on, I think, Thursdays or something. So I'd go spin fire with everybody else. But like performing in any kind of stage, like it's hard. Like I could count on my fingers the times I've performed. Yeah.
No way. That is shocking. That is so shocking to me.
No, it's not, because poi spinners don't. It's like, where would those? Maybe there's more opportunities now, but I mean, it would be like I did the EJC like open mic night once.
Yeah.
But what else would there be, right? And the thing is, like, most performing requires, there's the grassroots poi community, and then there's performing. And for a lot of the kinds of performing people are doing, the venues for performing they're not the grassroots stuff. So for a lot of the performing opportunities, you need to plug into either the festival circuit or into build up your local in the
Right.
performance world for like yeah, and I was just a moving target. So, you know, like in the Alps in Switzerland, like there was nowhere to perform. I met like this farm in Emmental. It's beautiful, but there's nowhere to perform, and nobody would know who I am.
Okay. Whoa there. All right. Hold on. Before we get too far into that, I'm going to request that Joey pull up a video. Joey and I had just watched this video before we got into this episode because Joey, you know, bless his heart, he's new. You know, he's new. He doesn't know the significance, okay? But like for someone that was familiar with you in the late 2000s on YouTube was when I really feel like your videos started, you know, just exploding, okay? I'm going to go back to this video. It was one of the first, it was the remix, Joey, for you. It was the, remind me of the name. Go to his YouTube, go to Playboy really quickly, okay? So, one of your most popular videos of all time on YouTube, particularly, it was a compilation. You incorporated fire spinning videos as well as pictures and photography. Yes, that one right there. The one. Okay, this is so good. We're gonna play it on screen.
Circles Dream.
This is so good. Okay, now I would encourage you, if you are listening to this and you have not seen this video, please go watch it with sound. Okay, go watch it with sound. The music was absolutely beautiful, and keep in mind the time period that this was produced. You know, the compilation of you performing, you were spinning fire for lots of people, and there was also gorgeous photographs that were taken, long exposure photographs that became so pivotal and important to what would follow in terms of many years of trying to capture beautiful photographs of folks spinning poi, and this helped encourage people to be on point with their flowers, with their planes, the timing, the placement. I mean, the early photography work that was done is just so important. It's just so significant to myself when I think of perfecting my flowers. This is a lot of what I go back to, you know? So hold on though, but going back to why I brought this up, you were performing for quite a bit of people in this video and throughout many different events and performances. Okay. So what during this time,
like two of the 10 times.
No way. No. I am shocked to hear this because okay.
See, that
go ahead.
Show, that's a neat one there. Long story, but that and that was Halifax Busker Festival. That's one of the 10 times.
Gorgeous flowers. Whoever just saw that, how pristine were those flowers? And that was the standard.
This is all Halifax Busker Festival. Yeah, that's all the same event.
Still to this day, the way that you were doing flowers back then and still to this day is the standard of flowers. You cannot do it better. I refuse to believe it. You can't do it better. It was just perfected. And on that note, you created, when I think of old school style and when I think of the early innovation of tech poi, I think of your flower petal work and your precision and timing, planes. Like this is the stuff that I think you undersell yourself a little bit sometimes, Nick, and I'm glad to be the person to tell you this because it hurts me none. But I just want to tell you that just this style inspired hundreds of thousands of people. And I know it's weird to see. It's weird weird to feel that, weird to hear that, you know, hundreds of thousands of people, we get lost on the numbers, but the influence is not lost upon us. Yeah, just the nostalgia of watching this video in the early days of flower work and creation is just man. I mean, for me as a host, this is extremely nostalgic and emotional, just because like you were the first person that I saw that inspired me like that, you know. And I know that many of you at home right now, you're like, same. I feel the exact same. I know I'm speaking for you, and I'm telling Nick the things that you would like to tell him as well. So yeah, sorry, tangent over. Beautiful video. Now I want to get into the photography side of that video. When did you start getting into the photography, and when? I mean, pretty early on, clearly, but were you the person behind a lot of those photos?
Not in the like the ones in that video. That was like Hendrik and Michelle Gingras at the Poi Studio. That's like almost 20 years ago. And so those first LED photos, that was almost, I don't know if we'd planned on doing it that night. We started messing around, and some of those photos turned out really well. And then some of the early photos of LEDs and fires would be when I'd get together with photographers. And it was 2017 when I'd gotten a better camera, and me and Lorna and G, we were all in Turkey, and we took some photos in these ruins. These are Roman ruins, and one of those turned out really well. And that somehow made me think, you know, I really would like to know how to, you know, I said I have some visions of like, you know, what would be nice would be like me under the Northern Lights and or like, you know, fire goddess in the snowy, you know, like Scandinavia. And I had some ideas, and I was like, okay, I want to learn this. So the photography I started putting out around 6 years ago, you know, my photographer phase.
It was a great phase.
That was all me.
It was a great phase.
Was me. Yeah, well, it was, and that was interesting stuff. Again, it was just like where I ended up putting myself in debt. But yeah, it was neat to explore that, the camera, and it was fun to be behind the camera a lot, because often I would go places and we'd have a group of us who could all take turns in front of the camera. And so for a lot of that, you know, and we were sharing ideas too, but you know, I had my vision as the artistic director, and learned how to use the camera. So some of those photographs I was pretty proud of in the end.
They're incredible. I will make another request from Joey very quickly. If you would like to go to his Instagram and go ahead and show us some of the beautiful photos that he has taken over the years, I'll allow him a few moments to get this together. But truly, when you think of your artistic taste as far as photography and your precision with flowers, they're truly beautiful. They're the most incredible photos of poi I've ever seen, bar none. It does not even come close. We got a taste for it in that earlier video, which is crazy that you were already doing stuff that early on back then. But okay, go to the one on the left right there with the galaxy behind us. Okay, folks, take a look, appreciate the beauty. Okay, so and there's plenty of photos on here. Please go take a look. He has such incredible long exposure photos.
So go to the one with the Northern Lights there.
Yeah, do it. Yeah, the blue one. Sorry, the blue and green one. Right above that. There we go. Yeah. Oh my god.
Oh no, that's a video. No, scroll down more. So the one in the Northern Lights that was just a funny one, because that was in Finland. Laura invited me up. And we we're up in the Arctic Circle. Like, it's really.
Oh my gosh.
Actually, this is that whole.
And I'm okay with seeing this. I'm okay with seeing all these, by the way.
Oh, go to the one with to the left a little bit. left and up. That one.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, that's one of my. I really liked how that one turned out.
Gorgeous.
So thanks to that whole crew for all of them, because that was, I mean, it's like 20 below Celsius.
Oh
like,
my gosh.
We're like really far north.
That is incredible. Yeah, go ahead and just leave it scrolled down for a sec. I would love to just have y'all see these beautiful photos while we're checking them out here. I mean, this is why I've been so excited to talk about photography, because yeah, just wow. I wish I had come in contact with somebody that was that excited about getting long exposures in the kind of creative areas that you were doing them, and the precision, with the flower petals, all of it beautiful. I'm shocked by how much photography you've released on your Instagram. It was primarily photos. And while we're on the topic about Instagram, when did you? It was probably like what 10 or so years ago that you started getting in Instagram and being semi present on various social media platforms. How does Instagram? This is an off the wall question. I know that we this might put you on the spot a little bit, but how do you think Instagram varies from, like, in terms of poi content? Do you think it's overall beneficial for us to have short clips of people spinning poi, or do you think like the YouTube format really fit poi better in terms of what we want to see from poi videos and poi content?
I don't know. I mean, this is, for me, a lot of my poi journey, maybe it's my generation, but it was all about going to the stuff, going to play festival, and it was all about the live interaction. And I was putting stuff up, but maybe one of the reasons I would go through big phases of not putting stuff up is also because I never spent a lot of time watching stuff online. And I got into, I started doing Instagram, and I went through the photographer phase. But at the end of the day, I don't, I just don't like scrolling through stuff on my phone or my computer. So I never got that pulled into Instagram as a platform. And so, but I think the short form content, the short form approach has this it's got its positives and negatives.
Sure, of course, because it plays into a lot of our attention span. And how quickly, obviously, this is a problem in many communities, not just our own, just in the poi community. But we get pulled. I mean, our attention spans are so small nowadays. Like, even take this interview, for example. Plenty of people probably would have already gone off because they just need constant stimulation. But Instagram makes poi content available for a lot of folks, a lot of people, very accessible, and it exposes new people to the art form, which is great. And I will never hate on that, because like the only reason that I really even have a podcast is because of Instagram. Like I've been putting out videos on Instagram for a number of years now, but I do have a greater respect for YouTube videos that were released in a longer format, filled with a lot more tech that was longer sustained. Like there was a vision for the video. There was a theme for the video. It was taken in a specific location with many different backgrounds. And I think just the effort and the time put into a longer format video stands out more to me personally. So, but we can move on. So I want to talk about ᴜᴜᴜ for a moment. Speaking of traveling and all the travels that you've done throughout the years, 16 years ago, you posted a video on YouTube titled Poi Showdown, Nick versus ᴜᴜᴜ. I'm curious about how ᴜᴜᴜ not only became friends, but what that relationship meant to you at the time and in the years to follow, as far as having a friend that was incredibly gifted in pursuit and had a similar vision for poi as you did. Tell me about that, please.
Yeah, I've only got been able to hang out with him a couple times. So because somebody had sent me a video of his or that he had put up online,
Uh,
which I don't think I even found.
it's so good.
Yeah,
This is
making
so good.
that was definitely a highlight, making that video.
And it's like
And
silly and fun, but like you guys were pioneering this stuff back then. And anybody that knows Yuta, like think about Nick and Yuta in Japan 16 years ago, having fun, filming a poi video that was just goofy and new and like comical, but all it was just so good. Sorry. Continue. Sorry. I love this video so much.
yeah, I mean that was really silly. I'm so glad that they were into this. I don't know how I had the idea to do this, but I wrote them and asked, I wrote Utah and, would you guys want to help make like a silly video of like I'm coming down and we're like sort of poi competitors, but in the end we decide we just want to make everybody happy. And he was like, sure.
It's so good. Oh my god.
Yeah, that trip was great.
That's awesome.
And yeah, it was a really sweet group of people. And I maybe it's just like 2 other times I've seen Utah in person. So always having a bit of, every now and then writing or whatever, but going quite long, not having any interaction with him other than maybe seeing something he put online.
Sure.
But
Oh,
Utah was
beautiful.
definitely, yeah. And this is like some of the early poi tunneling.
Totally. Yeah, I was about to say poi tunneling. This is good for poi tunneling has gotten a lot better, but especially for the earlier years, this was incredible work. Like people were not doing that kind of stuff back then. You were very, very innovative in that sense.
Yeah,
I'm glad
you pointed.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, so I'm glad you pointed, because often my interest in some of these things was more kind of like filmmaking and storytelling, and so I appreciate that you liked that video and that you
Yeah, I
mentioned it,
loved
because
it.
that, one of my filmmaking moments.
I loved it. And I've done deep dives on Poi so many times throughout my life. Because like I mentioned earlier, you were the first person that I saw spinning poi online, period. But yeah, I mean, even just going through recently when I knew this interview was coming up and diving back into the older stuff and the older videos and finding just gems in the rough, like 16 years ago, you and Yuta just making a super funny, silly video that was based around tech and based around some skills in a sense, but also just the journey over there. It was just so well done. So glad we got to talk about that really quickly. Now what video is this? This is Yuta. Speaking of Yuta, we might as well just watch the video that you sent us in videos that inspired you in the earlier days. And what a man to be inspired by. The earliest days, Yuta. For those of you who don't know, go ahead and look up Yuta. You can see how it's spelled here down below. Yuta was an innovator, just like Nick and Ronin and the earlier generations. I mean, look how clean those flowers are. He very much embodied the earlier style and the what built the modern context and landscape of what we think of as poi spinning. These were the founders, the pioneers, the innovators. Yeah, Yuta was just incredible, so good. He inspired way more people than he knows, because I've had this conversation with friends throughout the years, but we take let's take you for example, Nick. You inspire X amount of people. Those people inspire X amount of people, right? So and this goes to the viewer at home, you watching this right now, you may not have learned from Nick, but you almost certainly learned from someone that learned from Nick. And this just goes to show you the level of influence that was happening back in the earlier days. And this, same thing could be said for a few other individuals, such as Yuta or Ronin or some of the folks that we've already mentioned. But the work that was being done back then was extremely significant, and so it's very important for us to pay homage and not forget where our history comes from and kind of the earlier styles of poi spinning. Very glad that you ran into Yuta. Just as a personal side note, that relationship is just great, because I respected you both and looked up to you both very much individually, and then knowing that you were collaborating.
Well, that's part of the fun of my generation, my days, was that I mean, because back then I'm part of what, I had a contribution, my passion and the contribution I was making, but part of that was just by being prolific, and that I happened to be, I was pretty good with poi, but I wasn't technically the best, but I was good enough that, combined with, I had a sense of music and a sense of timing, and I had like I could sort of, understand a bit how to shoot and edit. And it was that combination, plus just putting up a lot of videos, is part of why I ended up having this relationship with the art form that I did. While there'd be other people like, Andy Hnigsmith, who, like, I watch him spin something, so I'd be like, Andy, it's just mind bending. What, can I film this? And by the time I get the camera, he's gone. Right?
He's like, no, we're done. It's over.
He's like the snuffleupagus of poi spinning. But back in my day, I could literally go and meet. I probably did every really good poi spinner I heard of. Right? You need to meet. You need to go meet
Mel,
Rob and Drew and Fluffy and Ross in the
ᴘᴜ.
UK. And I go meet the crew. Exactly. Well, ᴘᴜ was years later. Like I think of like my day, like being like when I was really in the middle of it. I was before ᴘᴜ. It was like when it was Yuta and Ronin and Rob Thorburn and Drew, and there's like, I could think of more, and sorry if I'm missing. And then what happened over time was, like, there was the period where I could actually go meet them all in person. And then there started being more and more, faster and faster, right? And I remember seeing like the video of like Mel from Russia and being like, oh wow, he's really good too. And then ᴘᴜ, and oh wow, look at, and then it started being like boop 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 boop, boop
right.
And then Jonathan Alvarez, like that was a real turning point. It's like Jonathan Alvarez, like holy shit, what is this?
So, and
what's he?
And you had briefly mentioned him, but I think I got lost. We have so much to talk about, but I do want to touch on Jonathan for a moment, because you shared a similar feeling to why I feel like he stepped away from the poi community, and this is a topic that I wanted to get into with you personally. But why do you think, you don't have to put yourself in Jonathan's shoes, but just as a person who can relate to Jonathan as far as notoriety level and all the things that we had previously talked about, what do you think was the main culminating factor into you kind of stepping away and taking some personal time away from social media? Do you think it was the things that we had talked about earlier, as far as videos performing well, and us getting kind of bogged down by this idea of influence, and like, from your perspective, what do you think that is in regards to?
Well, I can't, as far as Jonathan goes, I haven't talked to him in years. I'd love to know.
Yeah, me too. And I don't want you to speak for Jonathan, but for yourself, as somebody who's spectating and can kind of relate, from your end, what would you imagine for yourself and for Jonathan similar?
I mean, for myself, there's a few dimensions. I mean, I've been through some really pronounced, I've been through some really severe depressions, that, and like one that began in 2013, that really wasn't good. Like I it's like walking into a store to buy groceries was hard. Like,
Mhm.
I'm not going to get in front of a camera,
Mhm.
right? Like, it's like at that point in my life, I'm like, look, I just need help. Like, I'm trying to,
Right.
like, who can help me, right? And so, like, there's no camera, there's no social media,
Yeah, totally. There's
not,
aside from all that.
yeah. So that was, um, so that's just been a major factor and that's why if you go back and look at my YouTube channel, well, you'd be like, oh, look, 6-month period, no videos, year period, no
Mhm.
videos.
Sure.
That's what's happening is those are the periods where I'd be in a depression and I just wouldn't produce anything for a year or whatever. And then, yeah. And so it's funny because it's like, there's a certain way that as I do think I have a certain, nature of an artist and maybe, more ways than I'd like,
Mm.
which does include wanting to express something and wanting to put things out there,
Right.
while at the same time not liking people looking at me.
Yeah. It's this
And yeah,
weird
yeah,
cycle of
yeah,
being an artist and wanting, to express things like you said, but also being, I think the nature of people, very passionate artists, is to be. I don't know if I want to say that. I mean, there's a history of artists who are, whether that be writers or actual creating physical art or visual art or whatever you want to call it. There's a certain level of I don't know if I want to say pain, but I mean, hopefully you guys know what I'm talking about. It's there's some trouble artists that have been prominent and also very
yeah,
innovative, but also
yeah.
very uh, the word is escaping me. Troubled. I don't know. Yeah,
It's
but
it is apparently a thing. But the other thing is that for me, it was. I think one of the things I value a lot is authenticity, and that's where producing and the fact that I made my career out of poi and all of that, where it's like I don't want to get in front of the camera unless I don't want to pretend I'm enthusiastic if I'm not. Right. So it's like when I get turned back on to poi, I'd be like, oh, this is a fun idea. Um, and that just happened less and less. So I don't, and there's to some degree, there's something to be said about, there's this thing where as artists, to some degree, you need to keep showing up anyway, whether or not you're feeling the inspiration.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and there's a degree to which that's true, and there's a degree to which, except it can't become inauthentic. And I, yeah, I stopped. I started moving on. I was playing guitar. I was very authentically paddleboard surfing in Costa Rica for a few years. And that is a really beautiful art form to paddleboard surf out with the turtles. And I've lost track of what the original question was.
No, it's okay. No, I enjoy hearing just the thoughts that spurred. Now, this is all very personal, but folks who are here and listening to this interview really deeply care. I want to say or invested in learning about you. And I know that might be weird because as a online personality, some of these people like myself have developed a personal like relationship with you, as weird as that is. But like we've consumed so much of your videos throughout the years, and we've known, maybe not known so much about you, but we've learned so much from you. And so folks have this kind of connection towards you, but you don't know any of them. So it's like,
Uh-huh.
it's this weird relationship to where people are like, Nick, what's up, buddy? Like, good to see you. They're all like really excited and they think that they, have a decent idea of who you are. But, at the end of the day, you go through all these hard things by yourself. And that's, I mean, sure, some of the people around you kind of experience them with you, but what one of my favorite quotes of you, one of my favorite things I've ever seen from you, spinning poi or not, you had a quote, and I'm not saying this verbatim, but you said something along the lines of fuck anything else, be authentic. Like it was something that was the main goal of the statement or whatever. That was like the main premise of the statement. But it was at the end of the interview, and it just stuck with me so well. You were just, I don't know, any interviews that I've ever seen with you, you're never trying to, disguise any of your feelings necessarily. So I would understand why you would feel that way. And if you were feeling in your personal life like you needed to step away and to have time away out of the spotlight, away from people having a look at you, and you didn't have to fake any of your feelings and stuff like that. But you did take away time away that was much needed in your personal life, away from everything like that, online personality. But yeah, I guess I just want to say thanks, man, like for putting in the time that you did, and the things that you were able to do, the videos that you were able to release. It was very significant in my own life. So yeah, I don't know, thank you very much for putting in the time and putting out what you could have. Now you have made some sense, like you've been a little bit online. But what do you think in your current life today? Do you think there's any chance of us getting, some Instagram videos from Nick every once in a while? Maybe every couple months. You put out a little, just every like 5 months, man. Like every 10 months. Throw us a little video. Myself and thousands of other people would just absolutely love to see it.
I wish I had higher ceilings in this room. I've got so. Oh God! But I've been wanting to jump backwards. Just to everybody who, through all of this, like the way I see what I was doing over the years is that I wasn't, I was more the Bob Ross of poi than like the Bruce Lee of poi.
Oh my God, that connection. Yes, 100%, brother.
Right? Let's all make happy poi circles.
And that's
right?
why we love you, dude. That's why.
Yeah,
Why,
that's also
like,
why really great people would come to, and I'm proud, and I'm glad I could do that, because like I think in the early days poi could be, it's this thing the sexy fire spinners do, and and it wouldn't be very approachable to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And then there's people who approached me and said that they had seen one of my videos, and that's when they realized, hey, that they can do it too. And well, I do think that while I didn't invent poi circles, I helped popularize poi flowers. They made contributions like that, but I mean, it means more to me, like, the people who I was an inviting personality, and just sort of, helped people realize that the whole art form can really be a community in that way. I was glad to be part of that, of poi being something that everybody and anybody can do, and it's just to be a vehicle for being happy. But what had you just asked before that?
I'm not even sure, Nick. I was very pulled in by hearing, because during this interview, let me just say this really quick. I don't want to like put you on the spot with like, please respond to my praise. But it's like, dude, at the same time, you don't really get to I don't think a lot of fans get to interact with you on this level. So I feel like I'm speaking for the younger version of myself, as well as for the thousands of artists that you've influenced, when I give you the much needed and well-deserved praise of, and thank you. And thank you. That's the biggest thing. And all these people reaching out to me over the last couple weeks that they've known that I was doing this interview, it is wild how many people that you've touched. And I feel the need to say it, and to give you the respect that you deserve as an artist and as a creator and an innovator. Some of my friends were like, dude, play cool, bro. Like, play cool. Like, they're like, don't get, keep it cool. I'm like, bro, that's just not me though. Like, it's just not, like, I gotta be authentic, and God damn it, the child in myself would be like, don't be too cool, man. Do not be too cool, dude. Like you've been, so I don't want to put you on the spot and be like, react to my praise, but like, I'm going to say it, bro. I'm going to say it. So I hope you still remember what you were going to say.
Oh, well, you had asked about there is a chance I've been doing this thing called Zouk dancing. It's a kind of partner dance that's really flowy and slinky, and I think it's just awesome. And some of my friends that I'm doing it with are also poi friends. And so Zouk is very circular. It's got these undulations and it's got this like boom boom to it that I really like. And because it's also my poi friends who are doing it. I've been spinning poi again. And now, unfortunately, in this room where I've created myself a little dance floor, the ceilings are super low, as is my destiny, I guess. But for the first time in years, I have been listening to music, and I start where I'm not thinking about Zouk. I'm actually thinking about poi again. And it did get me. I have had those moments where I'm beginning to be like, all right, this song would actually be really good for like a poi dance. So there's a chance that will go somewhere, and I'll start really playing poi again. I can't promise, but I also can't deny that there's the possibility.
Whatever makes sense to you, Nick, and whatever you're feeling in your personal life, but I don't mind being the motivation to just kind of like, hey buddy, like there's a lot of us out here that love you and that want to support you, and we still just, a lot of us just care very much about you. It just comes back to a lot of our origin stories, and I feel like that's why like the significance is so there for me personally and for a lot of others, is because that's where a lot of our stories started. And if it's people, again, sorry, like Joey's just a great example. Okay, like 2.5 years in, knows a lot about poi. There's so many people to be like, oh, he's a legend, she's amazing, she's great, she's one of the best, whatever. It's all great, they're all great, all right. But like few people, there's like a handful of people that are like as significant to the broader story at large. And like you said, the role that you played in it, as far as making people think that they could do it, or showing them that they could do it, not making them believe it, but showing them that they could do it, and then it was a learned art, and that we're all capable of being able to do it. You taking your time with the people that were maybe a little bit slower learners that were really excited, like your approach to making tutorials and to making videos that shed light on where you were at and your ideas were extremely significant. So if you do feel like making videos, please do.
Noted.
Okay, cool. And perfect.
And by the way, call out to I mentioned ᴘᴜᴜ, also big. He was in Vancouver teaching a workshop. That's how I connected with these friends who are now my Zouk dance poi crossover friends. So ᴘᴜᴜ helped. Big shout out to ᴘᴜᴜ, because ᴘᴜᴜ's going around creating. He's creating community.
Yeah. And so we'll okay, I'll get off my tangent about I'll leave it alone. Okay, but on the topic of community and community building, you've been a huge part of retreats in the poi community. So I want you to briefly talk about the greatness of having, the highs of having a great retreat, as well as, what are the things that you've kind of learned along the way of hosting a retreat, because you have so much experience in this field and it's very niche, and have been very curious to hear this from you.
The retreats were great.
Yeah.
I always found it hard, like as far as I was making my career out of poi, I always found it hard I always should have probably charging more than I was, but I wanted them to be accessible. And there'd always be people like, there'd be like my yoga teacher friends, and I think, oh, it would be so good if Banyan could be there. And I probably don't technically need to hire a yoga teacher, but if I do, then Banyan will be. And just that personality, I really, and so, like I always wanted the Poi retreats to be about Poi, but also just about us all having like a life affirming, like a big love-in together. And that really was often the case. Like the Poi retreats were often just really beautiful events, and
I'm sure.
these beautiful locations. And for me, it would also be like they'd always stress me out, right? Because it's like like 18 people who don't have a lot of money are spending the little money they have to come to Bali or Costa Rica. And I'd be like, okay, they all needs to be like this incredible experience for them all. And then afterward, I'd almost always go through a depression, like starting about a week after it was finished. And then it would be like a lot of time they like always not enough people are signing up. I'm like, I'm gonna, if people don't come, I lose money. I can't lose money on this.
Right.
I'm getting kind of stressed out about it.
Yeah.
And then I'd think, okay, this will be like the last Leviathan Poi retreat, for instance. But then it would happen and it would be so good. Like the Leviathan retreats where, they were really, and at the end of every one, I'd be like, we're doing this again. And with Mark be like, what dates can we do next year? And then we'd set it up again. So they were just great. And part of it, I think, is because in my videos, I've, that part of what I was doing, which was sort of like the Bob Ross of Poi. I haven't been to enough other people's retreats, but I think I was just attracting really great people. So
absolutely.
We just end up with these amazing, like people that all bring, like they bring games, right? And like every night we're tired and people start bringing out the different games they brought. Yeah. I'd be like, who are these people? This is awesome.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Yeah, your retreats and many others have just seemed very crucial to the development of many artists throughout their careers. So, and just as far as remind me, when's the last time you've done a retreat, and do you plan on doing any others in the future? I would imagine you do.
Like the last, it would have been a year or two before COVID, and because what happened, I burnt out. Part of my journey was there was a while where I had the family of friends I made that were, just people who maybe I'll never love people as much as I loved that group of friends I became close with, who are my other traveling friends. We get together in Bali, we get together in India, we get, and slowly everybody either died or settled down in their home countries, right? And then there were years where I kept, but it was like me 15 years into, I look at my suitcase, I just want to puke, right? Like I just can't, I'm just sitting in airports by myself. Like I just got to where I just can't, I'm passing through, but I'm just like a ghost. And my friends are all involved in things in their lives. They've got the choir they've formed. They've got all the stuff they're doing. And I'm just like, I'm there for like some weeks and then I'm saying goodbye. I'm always saying goodbye. Right. And I just eventually was like, I can't get back on the plane. Right. And then, so I stopped doing Bali and I stopped doing Costa Rica, which is really hard because they're really, really close. My friends there. And then I kept doing Leviathan because it's in Canada. And kept doing Costa Rica in the winter, but that stopped being a retreat because not enough people were coming. And I was just like the resident Poi teacher at Wild Sun, which is this animal rescue center, which is a pretty cool situation. But the numbers kept for Leviathan, like I have, to do it, there's expenses, right? And so it kept increasingly being where it's like, okay, well, and there have to be enough people for it to be a party is what I found, where like absolutely. If there's 15, because if it's like 8 people's awkward, is what I discovered. Like if there's 15, then it kind of takes off, and it's like but if it's like 8 people, it's kind of like people don't buddy up, and it doesn't. I don't know. And then then eventually I was like, I can't spend the whole year trying to promote this.
Absolutely, because it's
Anymore.
very taxing personally on yourself and as well as financially. I mean, emotionally and financially.
Yeah, I mean, it's the social media. Like if like I love the events, but like spending the whole year trying to win the Facebook contest or whatever, trying to
Yeah.
figure out how to get people
Oh,
to come was what I just didn't want to do anymore.
right. Well, and like you said, it's difficult to prepare for something for so long and then having it just to happen and just be gone in an instant, and then you're saying goodbye, and it's
Yeah,
very difficult.
and that's yeah. I mean, those events were great, but there's also that I was missing. I want friends who continue to be part of my life, and like to this day, I miss I miss some the people who came to Leviathan. These are people who
Right.
came back a few times in a row, right?
Right.
And it kept people only come back so many times, so it kept evolving. And I miss that, but it would be like 10 days of the year or 2 weeks of the year, and there's a certain way I want my social life to not be something that happens 10 days at a time, but it's like,
Yeah. I
boy,
mean, yeah,
yeah,
that's fair. That's
yeah.
fair. And Nick,
But yeah,
the reason I
uh,
ask really quickly. So when I announced that I was doing this interview, you'd be shocked about how many people messaged me and were like, dude, please ask him about Leviathan. Like, please ask him about the retreats. We wanted to come back. I wanted to come back. I'd go. So just know that if you are ever feeling up to it and you want to come back, there are more people than I think you would imagine that are still want to be a part of it and still want to learn from you and be there with you and experience. And it's not even what the crazy thing is you have such an impact that it's like people don't even necessarily, I mean, maybe they could take a few things away from you in terms of like poi spinning, but they want to be around you. They want to like share space with you. They want to spend time with you, and it's weird, but like I don't know. Is it really? Never mind. I'm not gonna say that. It's not weird. We love you. What the fuck? Never mind. All right. Um, no, but just know that the retreats, the people that have been to them, not only the people that have attended, but folks who want to attend and wish that they could have been there during that time period. There's still so much interest around it. So if you do decide to do it again, you better let me know because I would be there.
right.
I'd love to be there. Yeah. So,
We'll see.
go ahead.
Yeah, if I get on because it'll happen if I kind of get hooked back into poi again, and then start feeling like because it's all about that there being something that I'm sharing a part of, right? And so
Mhm.
and that might happen,
Well,
but I'll get everybody doing a little bit of zouk dancing.
okay,
Go ahead.
okay. I will. I'm not much of a dancer, Nick, but I will dance. I will dance, brother. So we're gonna turn it over. This is the segment of the podcast where I get to catch you off guard on one question. Now, we have fans, like I said, that have written in from all over the world, all kinds of incredible artists that want to hear, their question asked live. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Joey. He's going to ask the fan question. Whenever you're ready to go, Joey, go ahead and take it over.
Hello, Nick.
Hey.
Hello. I just wanted to add to the photography that I got to see is just breathtaking. I haven't got a chance to really like scroll down, and yeah, no, you have some amazing shots. I just wanted to add. So today's question comes from Stefan, aka Shampstagram6, on Instagram. Excuse me. Asked, "What's the most valuable lesson you've learned from poi as a practice, and what has it taught you?"
And that's very broad. So you
Right.
answer. You take a second. If you need to think about it, go ahead and answer whenever you're ready or whatever that means to you.
And I learned from poi as a practice. Mm.
Yeah. What's the most valuable lesson poi as a practice has taught you?
Oh, well, what'll come to mind is that it doesn't matter whether, like, it does. It could have been anything. Like it's what you pick. You can, if poise, the thing you're exploring with your curious mind and your your heart, because you want to fully live and you want to somehow, I am here, oh universe, and everybody,
Yeah.
and I want to be all the more here, and I want to,
Yeah.
Great if it's poi, but it really doesn't have to be. Yeah, and that, it's like poi won't give you confidence, right? They're just balls on strings or whatever.
Yeah, no, won't give you confidence. That's for sure. If you want to,
yeah, but it can be the thing through which you explore your confidence, and through which you explore your artistry, and through which you explore all the stuff that you've got that you have. It's it's totally cheesy, but the stuff that you have.
No, that's true though. That's true.
Yeah. Because I mean and part of that's from learning the hard way of being of in a way, having ended up in that sort of position of all these people online being like, we like what you're doing, and that did shit for how I felt about myself, right?
Yeah, sure. Which is something you had to learn the hard way again. Yeah.
So
I really love
what I learned from.
No, go ahead, please. Yeah, continue.
Yeah, what I learned from poi as a practice is that there's actually that some of the places that we might, in the early days think the happiness is going to come from isn't. It's going to, it comes from other stuff, and it's you can find in fortune cookies what what the important stuff is. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and like you said about the, like, I don't want to repeat myself, but it really just boils down to it not being a poi thing, right? Like you had just barely said, it's not necessarily a poi thing. It's an interest, and it's a life thing. And it's really about you finding yourself in an artistic forum or a medium, right? And when you said that you have to show up regardless of how you're feeling, because moments of inspiration can happen at any point, and showing up for that inspiration and the opportunity to get that feeling is so important. I cannot tell you the amount of bad days and the horrible things that I've been going through in my life where poi was always there for me throughout the good and the bad times. And when I showed up on the bad days, and I showed up on the days that really I was not feeling it, I was spinning poi to get away from everything else, and I was sad, or I was distraught, anxiety, all the things. Poi was always there for me. And when I showed up for poi in the same way that poi had been there for me, that's when I really felt like I had gained some incredible inspiration, to where a lot of the most beautiful parts of art are contrived from very painful places in our lives. And I think that that's like a positive and a negative, right? It's there, there's a lot of nuance to that, but yeah, like you said, it could have been anything. And I love that you said that, because this is a poi podcast. Your life is based around poi. My life is very much based around poi, but you're right. We could have learned a lot of the same things and a lot of the same lessons from other things and other mediums, right? So for the last segment, I want to get into one more thing before we end off. Now, this is going to tie into a little bit of modern poi spinning and a little bit of where the poi community is at nowadays. You sent me a video, Ty Rochford, Okay.
Mm.
Ty Rochford would just shout out to Ty. And if you haven't seen the episode, go back and watch it. It's incredible. Man's incredibly intelligent, passionate, artistic, all that, right? So I want to pull up a video. Joey will pull it up here. Ty has taken on a huge step into a newer style of poi, and a modern style of poi spinning. And I've been so curious to ask you about how you feel about the poi community and its current place as far as tech and like the way that the approach is currently being done. Like talk about like how poi has changed in terms of like stylistically and what people are doing differently nowadays.
Well, the whole tech poi thing happened.
Yeah.
And my interest was always poi and dance. And that's why Ty stood out as one of the people where it's like, if I could not see the poi, I would still be like, oh, check this guy out. Right? I'd still be watching him move.
Yeah.
Big smile, like the popping. I'd still enjoy just watching him dance. Right. And so he's added poi to the way he's moving his body.
Mm-hmm.
And that just happened to be one of my interests always, is how, and often I'm watching somebody do poi and I'll sort of tune out the poi and just watch them.
Right.
And sometimes they're doing amazing things with the poi, but they're not moving much. And that's not, in those cases, that's just not the point. Right. But and sometimes like what they're doing with the poi is so amazing. I'm like, oh, it's like totally mind-bending what they're doing.
Yeah, totally.
But I'll usually be the most interested if I really appreciate when people are moving their bodies and to the music. Because also what happens is like I watch them and then I listen to the music and I might be like, oh, there's no connection, right? So Ty is an example where it's all so connected. Like the music, his dancing, the poi spinning, it's all fusing in a way that I really admire.
Absolutely.
And that's just always was always my interest, was those things going together.
Well, yeah, and you're very dance motivated, even, going way back into your martial arts background and dance background, but even currently still to this day. So I just love
none of this, I mean, like I'll see things like every now and then I would hear people be like, you can't just like put on, like hot pants and spin fire and think that's going to make a show, right? But there's going to be somebody who's going to be like, oh yeah, and somebody will make that a really good show. Like there's no rules, right? Like you don't have to dance, you don't have to. It's if the thing somebody's doing is the thing they want to do, then that's it.
Yeah. Well, we can close it out. I am just incredibly honored, and I just, again, I'm gonna try to I said a lot of the things that I wanted to say, so I'm gonna try to not backtrack. But I just want to say again, on the behalf of myself, my brother, and many thousands of other artists, Nick, we're incredibly grateful for you, my friend, and the poi community would not be the same without you. And I just want to express my deepest gratitude towards you as a person, as an artist, through all the horrible, through all the stuff that you've been through in your life, as far as like being broke and owing people money and the things that the struggles of living the type of life that you chose to live, as far as being an artist, not doing something that was the most financially lucrative, right? So like all the decisions that you made to pursue what you loved and to travel and to do, again, what spoke to you as a person. I am so grateful. And I just can't tell you how much it means to me as a person. I mean, podcast aside, my viewers aside, all this stuff, like, just there are real people out here that were incredibly touched and motivated by you in their earliest years when they started their journey. And, it's just like the landscape would look a lot different without you. So I just want to close it out with that. And I just want to say thank you. So if there's any final words you would like to say, we're gonna go ahead and throw up where to find you on social media. I know you're not like, trying to get a lot of necessarily support because you're not as active on social media nowadays, but you know what? People know where to find you. Show him some support. And if there's anything you want to say, we'll go ahead and close it out with that.
I had wanted to thank Anna Viscuno. How do you say her last name?
So,
she was on the podcast.
Yes, she was.
Helped. She's one of the reasons, because she had written me, and then that got me to come back to what you were doing and respond. So she helped get me on. And then also going back, I was like looking back to her videos on her stream. And it just made me think, like you go back over time and you can see the way she's technically gotten better, which is awesome. But there's also like, I think there was a certain video she made some years back that got a lot of attention on Poidcast. And it's just, part of it is like her skill, but it's like there's something really easy to like about her, right? And just watching, the relationship she's got with the Poi and her doing her thing and sort of like, leaning into the confidence of putting herself out there. It's all really likable.
Yes.
And I think and that's the kind of thing I'm really glad when I see that the community is celebrating that, whether it's her or other people putting themselves out there. I really appreciate that. But yeah, shout out to her and shout out to all the people who I, didn't have time to shout out.
Yeah,
to,
I know.
A lot of them.
I know. We had a lot of information to get through, and Anna has just been such a great guest, a great friend. Sounds like to both of us. So, that's just incredible, and I'm sure she very much appreciates this. I know you're watching right now, so shout out to you. But we'll go ahead and close it out on that note. Nick, it's been a pleasure. Episode 18, y'all. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Let us know what you thought of the episode, please. It helps us a lot. And we'll go ahead and close it out with that. It's been a wonderful episode. Peace out.
Thanks, everybody.